They rejected you, and somehow you're apologizing to them. You're sitting there wondering what you did wrong, replaying every conversation, every text message, every moment you think you failed them. Stop. The worst narcissist doesn't just reject you, they make you reject yourself. If this sounds like I'm reading your diary, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments, what's the cruelest thing someone made you believe about yourself after they left? I read every single comment, and your truth might be the lifeline someone else desperately needs today. Here's what no one tells you about narcissistic rejection. It's not rejection at all. It's psychological warfare disguised as a breakup. The narcissist doesn't just walk away. They leave you convinced that you drove them away. They plant seeds of self-doubt so deep that you'll spend months, sometimes years, watering their lies with your tears. Nathaniel Branden, the father of self-esteem psychology, understood something the narcissist desperately wants you to forget. Your self-worth is not a democracy. It doesn't get voted on by other people. It's not a committee decision where the narcissist gets the final say. But they've convinced you otherwise, haven't they? They've made you believe that their approval is the measuring stick for your entire existence. Listen to me carefully. When a narcissist rejects you, they're not rejecting who you are. They're rejecting who you refuse to become. They wanted a mirror, not a partner. They wanted applause, not authentic love. They wanted control, not connection. And when you couldn't disappear into their reflection completely, when your humanity showed through their fantasy, they called it your failure. But here's the truth that will shatter their spell. Their rejection was never about your inadequacy. It was about their terror of your adequacy. You were becoming too real, too human, too impossible to control. The moment you stopped shrinking to fit their distorted image, they panicked and called it rejection. You know what's beautiful about their rejection? It means you kept pieces of yourself they couldn't touch. It means somewhere deep inside, your soul said no to their demand for total surrender. That rejection you're mourning, that's your dignity refusing to die. The narcissist teaches you to see love as something you earn through suffering. They create a twisted equation. The more it hurts, the more real it must be. The more you chase, the more worthy you become. The more you apologize for existing, the closer you get to deserving their crumbs of affection. This isn't love. This is emotional terrorism with a smile. Branden called it the 6 pillars of self-esteem: living consciously, self-acceptance, self-responsibility, self-assertiveness, living purposefully, and personal integrity. The narcissist attacks every single pillar. They demand you live unconsciously, accepting their version of you. They make you responsible for their emotions, while removing responsibility for your own. They punish your assertiveness and redirect your purpose towards serving their ego. They corrupt your integrity by making you complicit in your own diminishment. But here's the truth they never want you to discover. Their rejection was never about your worth. It was about their terror. They rejected you because authentic love terrifies them. Real intimacy requires vulnerability, and narcissists are emotional cowards wearing confidence like armor. They can't handle someone who sees through their performance to their wounded core. You think you failed them, but you succeeded in the only way that matters. You remained human, while they demanded you become an extension of their ego. You felt deeply while they measured everything through the lens of their own reflection. You offered genuine connection while they collected emotional trophies. The cruelest part isn't the rejection itself. It's how they make you complicit in your own abandonment. They whisper that you're too much, too needy, too emotional, too intense. They convince you that your capacity to love deeply is a flaw, not a gift. They turn your greatest strength, your ability to see beyond their mask and love their wounded core, into evidence of your inadequacy. They gaslight you into believing that healthy self-esteem is arrogance, that having boundaries is being difficult, that expecting consistency is being demanding, that wanting reciprocity is being selfish. They rewrite the entire dictionary of healthy relationships and convince you that their distorted definitions are the truth. Stop carrying their shame. Stop apologizing for having a heart that loves without conditions. Stop believing that being rejected by someone incapable of real love says anything about your worth. Their rejection is not a verdict on your value. It's evidence of their limitations, their fear, their inability to handle the kind of love that doesn't come with strings attached. The narcissist needs you to believe that love is scarce, that being chosen is rare, that their attention is a prize worth destroying yourself to win. But Brandon understood that self-esteem, real self-esteem, doesn't come from external validation. It comes from internal alignment between your values and your actions, between who you are and who you choose to be. You were not too much for the right person. You were simply enough for yourself to recognize when someone was treating your gold like gravel. That recognition, that moment when some part of you said, "This isn't love," that was your self-esteem fighting for survival. The narcissist's greatest fear is that you'll realize you never needed their validation to be whole, that you'll understand their rejection was actually your rescue, that you'll see their departure not as abandonment, but as liberation from having to apologize for taking up space in your own life. They trained you to see their criticism as insight, their withdrawal as consequence, their cruelty as honesty. But none of it was true. Their criticism was projection. Their withdrawal was manipulation. Their cruelty was cowardice disguised as strength. Your worth was never up for debate. Their inability to see it was never evidence that it didn't exist. It was evidence that they were looking for their own reflection, not your authentic self. And when you couldn't become their mirror, when your humanity kept interrupting their fantasy, they called it rejection. But it was actually protection, your soul protecting itself from disappearing completely. Here's what the narcissist never tells you. They need you broken more than they need you whole. They need you questioning your reality more than they need you confident in your truth. They need you chasing their approval more than they need you secure in your own worth. Your brokenness was their power source. Brandon wrote that self-esteem is the experience of being competent to cope with the basic challenges of life and being worthy of happiness. Read that again. Worthy of happiness. Not worthy of their happiness. Not worthy of happiness if you meet their conditions. Just worthy. Period. The rejection that broke you was actually the moment you refused to break completely. Honor that. Honor the part of you that remained intact despite their attempts to rewrite your worth. Honor the voice that whispered, "This isn't right," even when they convinced you it was your fault. You don't need to be chosen by someone who sees you as an audition rather than a human being. You don't need validation from someone who mistakes control for love. You don't need approval from someone who treats your heart like a part-time job they can quit without notice. The worst narcissist makes rejection feel like your fault because they need you to believe that their inability to love is your failure to be lovable. But the truth is simpler and more painful for them. They rejected you because loving you would have required them to face themselves. And that terrified them more than losing you. You were never the problem. You were the solution they were too afraid to accept. You were the mirror they couldn't look into without seeing their own emptiness. You were the reminder of everything they couldn't face about themselves. And sometimes being rejected by the wrong person is the only way to find your way back to the right life. The life where your worth isn't negotiable, where your love isn't conditional, where your existence doesn't require anyone else's permission.